We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle around to tend these vibes. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive in this great turning. We shall learn to lead in love.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. And a special thank you to everyone who made the virtual choir possible. I'm so glad to be with you all as we renew our commitment to justice and talk about how we vote love and defeat hate during our 2020 elections. When we vote love and defeat hate, we mean taking the opportunities of the 2020 elections to resist the systems of domination and culture of supremacy that strips communities of power and agency. Much has changed since we introduced you to the You the Vote campaign exactly 4 months ago. Tonight, you will learn about how You the Vote is pivoting its work to meet the challenges that we face due to the COVID-19 virus. You'll hear stories about how our congregations and our partners are moving work and showing up to support communities deeply impacted by the pandemic, and how we're developing new strategies to achieve our goals. You'll hear from panelists Paige Ingram from Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism, Annalise Ortiz from Smart Justice ACLU, and Desmond Meade from Florida Rights Restoration Coalition. But before we jump in, President Susan Frederick Gray has joined us to share a message about the role of our Unitarian Universalist faith in this moment. Welcome, President Susan.
Thank you, Nicole Presley, our You the Vote national organizer. It is so good to be with all of you today. And I just want to start and offer a prayer for everyone that is here gathered this evening, this afternoon, depending on where you are. A prayer for you and your loved ones, for your well-being, for your resilience, for your strength, for your heart. It is so good to be together, to fill our spirits with music and with the work of organizing, and to focus on how we thrive in this moment. Recently, I heard these words: we only pull through this by pulling together. And these ring so true. This is no time to go it alone. And we are strong when we lean into each other and we pull together. In this moment when compassion and care and humanity need to be at the forefront, this pandemic has exposed the fact that too many things in our country have long been broken. Too many lives long treated as expendable. Even before this pandemic, tens of millions of people in the US were already in crisis. Millions were experiencing a housing crisis, food insecurity, inadequate health care, mass incarceration and immigrant detention, and the health impacts of environmental toxins and climate devastation. Long-standing systems of white supremacy result in COVID-19 killing Black people at exponentially higher rates. People in prisons and detention centers fight the death penalty, a death sentence of being incarcerated during the coronavirus. And politicians right now are reopening their states knowing full well it will take the lives of their own citizens. These interlocking systematic issues of racism, exploitation, and poverty are making the impacts of the coronavirus far worse in this country, and particularly for Black people, Indigenous people, Latinx people, and other vulnerable communities. Yet as Unitarian Universalists, our theology teaches us that salvation is not individual. Salvation and liberation are collective. Rooted in the values of interdependence and mutuality, we know that our world is one world, and that what happens to one affects all of us. And therefore, the work of justice is inseparable from a faith that is rooted in love. Now, one of the things that is giving me hope right now is that there is so much opportunity in this moment. The consequences of what has been business as usual and the cost to human lives is undeniable. The limits of the exploitative systems to nurturing community and public health is clear. People's hearts are being opened to these exploitative systems and the need for change. I've been rereading Naomi Klein's book, Shock Doctrine, which explores the mechanism of disaster capitalism. And Klein tells us that at times of disaster, when people are upended and in shock, that these are times when fundamental systematic change can happen. It means these times just like right now, are both moments of incredible risk, but also of opportunity. There are examples in history when disaster capitalism used crisis and collapse to expand corporatism, inequality, and undermine democracy. And we see this right now in corporate bailouts and the denial of voting rights in Wisconsin. We see clear evidence of that. But also at other times in history, these moments of crisis have been times when there's been a dramatic expansion of policies that lift up the common good. So much is on the line right now, and it's a heavy time, both personally, pastorally, and prophetically. And so much is possible. Vote by mail for every voter, universal health care, decarcerating jails and detention centers. Just months ago, these seemed so radical, and right now, they seem absolutely essential, life-saving needs. And this is why the vote is so important and so critical that it's happening right now, because we cannot separate the systemic attacks on democracy from the actions that lead people to be treated as expendable. They are interrelated, and fundamentally, human thriving is a spiritual imperative and the bedrock for democracy. This is a time when we need to mobilize to protect human lives, human thriving, and expand democracy. We have a choice to make. This pandemic could be a moment where we double down on a deadly status quo, or it could be a moment with the effort of people like all of us and our neighbors and our larger communities pulling together to make major investments in equity and justice, finally putting people and the planet over profits. What would it take for all of us as Unitarian Universalists to go all in to make sure that what we build and what we fight for during this pandemic serves all people's thriving? We pull through this by pulling together. Everything about this pandemic shows us how interconnected and interdependent we are and how much we need each other. This is a time now for community, for solidarity, for cooperation, and for mobilization. This is the time to pull for real and lasting systemic change. It's time to you the vote. It's time to thrive. Thank you all. So glad to be here with you.
Thank you so much, President Susan Frederick Gray, for those words. Now is an incredibly important time to find connection, to be together in new and meaningful ways, and to build up our spirits to radically change the world. President Susan is right. Together is how we get through. United in principles and purpose is how we actively create a world where the principles of democracy, dignity, interdependence are reflected in both our policy and practice in our communities. When we first launched the UU the Vote campaign on January 12th, we presented 5 focus areas for our work. Now that work looks different. When we planned to have open door congregations, we were in a different time. Now that work is on pause. Like our voter registration work, our door knocking work, things are a little more complicated and things have to be retooled. Over the several weeks, our team has come together, calling folks in our congregations, calling our state action networks to discern how this campaign must transform in this moment. We heard from UUs in Ohio who organized food banks to serve undocumented communities and delivered absentee ballot requests and stamped envelopes to grocery stores, pharmacies, apartment complexes, and other public places to make sure folks could safely vote in the primary. Our friends at the READ Project in DC, acknowledging the incredible urgency here in Georgia, organized folks to make calls to voters with Reclaim Our Vote. This is so critical as our Black communities, as our immigrant communities and organizations devote much of their energy to do the life-saving work during COVID-19, and as we fight to dismantle the systems and structures of white supremacy that threaten those communities. We have also been inspired by all of our congregations and ministries who are supporting spiritual resilience through virtual choirs, meditation, pastoral care, and other essential community gathering spaces. So when we developed our You the Vote COVID-19 response, we looked to the work of our communities. Today, it is clearer than ever that the foundation of our democracy is human thriving. Access to healthcare, housing, living wages, food access are the building blocks to the security and agency that make our democracy work. We cannot register voters while folks are figuring out where their next meal is coming from, trying to find housing, or grieving unfathomable loss. So what are we going to do? You the Vote has developed 3 key focus areas that we are calling on you and your congregations to mobilize around. The first is that we are going to act local to build thriving communities. We need to resource and flank our hard-hit communities. We must follow the lead of our local partners and community groups. This can look like making masks, distributing those masks, doing the work to free folks from detention centers and jails, encouraging folks to vote love in local sheriff and DA races, or supporting mutual aid networks to resource communities with food, supplies, and funds. This is best done in partnership and relationship. Find folks that are leading this work near you and get involved today. If you're looking for help in this work, you can visit us at youthevote.org and join us for our office hours or look at our launch guide that will help you figure out how to plug into this work. Second, we need you to be all in on the issues and all in on democracy. Whatever issues you're mobilizing around right now, keep at it. Build a team in your congregation to engage people in your communities in values-based conversations so we can build a groundswell of folks voting love in 2020. It's important to note that all in, of course, means cooperation and collaboration. In January, we identified Tier 1 states where UUs would make a difference in local, state, and a national scale. Every state has important work to do right now, and our Tier 1 states are fighting on all fronts as they face the opening of businesses against the recommendations of health professionals, representatives doing little to safeguard elections, and allowing vulnerable groups like our seniors and care facilities to be left without the protection that they need from this virus. Over the course of the campaign, we'll be creating opportunities for UUs across the country to take action and mobilize voters in these critical states. At the end of this program, you'll be invited to take the first step in this work because we are all in this together. And our third point, we need to build spiritual resilience that grounds us in purpose and supportive community. This pandemic impacts us all in different ways. As we unpack and respond to this moment, we will need to rest. We will need to stop and take care of ourselves and our loved ones. We know that the need to take action to preserve democracy and fight for justice is great, but as we are acutely aware of right now, we need each other to survive. UU the Vote has twice monthly spiritual sustenance gatherings to build community in this difficult time. We also are building more opportunities for gatherings, workshops to tend to the minds, bodies, and spirits of everyone involved in this campaign. So today we have a lineup of folks will be talking about ways they've engaged in this work around these three focus areas. First up is the illustrious community organizer, Paige Ingram from Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism, to talk about one of the ways we can support hard-hit communities through the Babies and Bailouts campaign. Take it away, Paige.
Hey, y'all. Oh, wow. You know, I must say, Nicole, I just want to thank you. And I want to uplift Black leadership and your leadership in particular for making this happen. And I spent a lot of time today just thinking about what does this all mean and what's really important to lift up right now. And Susan Frederick Ray took a lot of the words out of my mouth, which in reality is a very good thing, because it means that as a faith, we are really on the same page about what is important, what is worth lifting up. So I'll spend a little bit of time talking about babies and bailouts, but I think that what's important also to lift up, and what I'm realizing in my spirit right now, is that we are not a one issue people. And so I want to bring as much to the table as possible. I was at a call last night that was hosted by our friends at the Highlander Center. It was a state of emergency call. And I think in some ways, the people proclaiming that there is a state of emergency is worth noting, particularly in the South, but all around this country. Something that came up on that call was the fact that this moment that we're in requires a sense of complexity. I bring up this idea about us not being a one issue people for that exact reason. With COVID-19, for some of us, it was the first time that we were really seeing the interconnectedness of so many issues and seeing the vulnerabilities of so many people. Now, for others of us, this is not news, but wherever that we were coming from, here we are, right? And so it's very easy to be frozen in this sense of, or this lack of clarity that we're in. But if we're being truthful and honest with ourselves, we're about to be in this for a while. And I think that we are all, to the best of our abilities, learning to adapt. And so what does that mean once we've adapted? Is that we can reclaim our power, we can lean into our power and flex our power that we have as individuals, that we have as a community. There is strength in the organizations and institutions that we belong to. And we don't need to have a brick and mortar congregation that we're all standing under to realize that. And I just really want to focus on that for a second. We are still interconnected. We are still living in communities, and that has not shifted. What that does mean is that it might stretch us. It might give us a challenge to take on some things we've never done before to connect. And I really think that's the blessing. There are blessings, even in the scariest of times. And it's up to us, particularly as people of faith or people who identify with this faith community, to say, yes, I do recognize that. I can recognize the horrors and I can recognize the blessings in this moment. I can mourn and I can rejoice in the profound connectedness that we now have, most of us who have access to the internet and things like that. And so, yes, Blue has been committed to, as of late, really from day one, but we're really trying to proclaim that, yes, we are down for this abolitionist cause. And there are a variety of resources out there for y'all to look at. Just check out our YouTube, check out our Facebook. But really, what does that mean to take time to proclaim it? It means that now, like Susan Frederick Ray was saying, so many things are available to us. So many solutions are suddenly available to members of Congress and to folks that we have elected. And so personally, I'm just gonna say, like, I am part of that left. I'm part of that radical left. And I don't care about the side eyes anymore, because there's no time for neutrality. There's no time for it. And all of us know right now, we know one person, we know a couple of people who may be inclined to agree with us politically, but maybe haven't taken the moves to like really do something, or they don't want to be looked at sideways of being too this and too that. Go ahead and be too whatever you need to be too aggressive, be too boisterous, be too radical, be whatever that you need to be, as long as you're showing up for the people around you and the people that you do not see. I don't need to say anything about, hopefully I shouldn't, but I will name this, the anti-Asian racism and hate crimes, the moves that are being made by elected officials to strip away the rights of indigenous peoples on their lands and in their communities, the killing of Black people with little to no regard for our lives. This has not changed, but suddenly we are all here and we are all seeing it. And so I just want to leave you with a few questions. How are you going to deepen your commitment to this work? What does that look like for this upcoming election, but also what seeds are you sowing for beyond? Whatever happens in November and whoever steps in January. How are you building a broader movement? What does that look like? If you close your eyes and you imagine, as a good friend of mine said, think about what victory would look like if it's right in front of you. So how would you move if you knew you were this close to getting what you wanted and getting the kind of community that you've always wanted, building the kind of world that you've always wanted? What would you do if you weren't scared and knew that you couldn't fail to fight and win our people's ability not only to survive, but to thrive? These are some questions that I want you to think about, but I don't want you to be frozen in just thinking about it. It's very easy to feel like you're inadequate, that you don't know enough, that you're afraid of who you might hurt or what you're gonna do. You just gotta lean into it. You gotta be willing to hurt somebody and be willing to be accountable for it, because as people, we will always hurt other people. How do we move beyond the fear? How do we think outside of our own comfort zones? And who do you need to talk to? Who do you need to call on to make that possible? Nicole was talking about building spiritual resilience. And that starts with understanding that this work, this organizing, this agitating, this educating, this motivating that we need to do for our folks, that is a spiritual endeavor. It's not a chore. It's not a chore. It's an act of love. And so if love's the thing that motivates you, or maybe it's anger, maybe you're feeling pissed off, whatever, the point is that you get up and you do something about it and you don't wait. And so with that being said, I am available and very easy to find. If you are needing a direction and what to do, if you're curious about abolition, if you're curious about decarceration, if you're curious about how to get in here and just shake things up, I'll make myself personally available to that. And I, again, want to thank everybody who's on this call and implore you to make moves.
Woo! And the Paige Ingram always coming through with a word. Thank you so much, Paige. And thank you, Blue, for leading us in this incredibly important work. Reverend Ashley Horan is saying amen. I'm sure many of us are as well. The next person we have up is Annalise Ortiz. While we're doing the work,
Hi, everyone. My name is Annalise. I represent ACLU of Arizona Smart Justice. Smart Justice had been working in Maricopa County, where Phoenix is located, to educate voters about an upcoming election for county attorney. The county attorney is one of the most powerful elected positions in the criminal legal system, but not a lot of voters know about their power. They decide who goes to prison and for how long. Historically, our county attorneys have caused a very high prison rate here in Arizona, and it's why we want voters to know that they have an opportunity this year to support candidates who will send less people to prison. Now, this pandemic hit just before our very first planned canvass, so we had to cancel that, and our work's focus is now entirely shifting to saving lives by getting people out of jails and prisons. We are continuing to hold the current county attorney, Alistair Adele, accountable for refusing to release people from jails. We started an email campaign to her office. We also are pressuring our governor, Governor Doug Ducey, to release people from prisons because you cannot socially distance in prison. And we know that releases are the most effective way to save lives. We actually have harsher laws here in Arizona than other states, so our prisons are filled with people who do not need to be there. And a prison sentence is not a death sentence, period. We've mobilized alongside families who have loved ones currently in jails and prisons to stage demonstrations outside the governor's press conferences. Other organizations like Puente, Arizona, and Mass Liberation Project have organized other socially distanced safe protests, like driving around the prisons in cars, driving around detention centers, honking and hollering to show our support for the people inside. So our work clearly looks very different, but the work cannot stop because lives are on the line. And now more than ever, we are seeing why criminal justice reforms are so crucial. We know that ending cash bail isn't a radical idea. It's just common sense because people should not be held in dangerous jail conditions just because they're too poor to pay their bail. It's showing us that overcrowded jails, prisons, and detention centers are fundamentally inhumane, and we have to reduce the populations, not just during this pandemic, but long-standing as we go on, as we move on after this. So let's organize to make sure that we don't just imagine these new solutions, but that we make it happen through policies and at the polls. I ask you to reflect about how your local elected officials are responding to this crisis. Is your county or district attorney working to release people from jails to stop the spread of COVID? What about your governor or sheriff? How will their action or inaction impact your vote? Now, if you're in Arizona, you can get involved with one of these car protests this Friday, May 15th, outside of the women's prison in Goodyear. You can find more information at bit.ly/freedomcaravanaz. And for my friends in other states, get involved with your local ACLU affiliate to begin moving policies toward your values in 2020. Thanks so much.
All right. And while we do the work of acting local and building thriving communities, we also have to tend to the democracy that has been worsened by COVID-19. Arizona is one of our tier 1 states where UUs are making the difference in organizing folks to defeat hate at the ballot box. And I invite all of you to find ways in your state to do that work. But next, we also want to lift up the work of our partners at Florida Rights Restoration Coalition, who have been all in on democracy by
Hello, everyone. My name is Desmond Meade, and I'm the Executive Director of Florida Rights Restoration Coalition. It is indeed an honor to be able to present to you today as you attend the Unitarian Universalist How We Thrive, a live virtual event. I also want to take this moment to once again thank the Unitarian Universalists for your efforts in helping us pass Amendment 4 in November of 2018 when we re-enfranchised over 1.4 million Floridians. Today, I was asked to give a brief update as to the status of Amendment 4. We know that when we passed Amendment 4, Florida legislatures enacted legislation that required the full payment of fines and fees before an individual was able to register to vote. Fortunately, that did not apply to all of the 1.4 million, and so we were immediately able to start registering returning citizens in January of 2019. I am one of the many who was able to register, and to date, I'm happy to say that over 80,000 returning citizens have been registered in the state of Florida. But there were many more returning citizens who had some type of financial obligations, and we had to address those concerns. And so Florida Rights Restoration Coalition engaged in a two-pronged process to do so. Prong number one was utilizing our court system to actually have an individual have their sentence modified so they would not be required to pay fines and fees before registering to vote. And then prong number two was establishing a fines and fees campaign fund, to which we were actually able to raise over $500,000 to help individuals who otherwise would not have been able to pay off their fines and fees and did not have access to the courts, that they were able to utilize those funds to get those fines and fees paid. And so both of those programs are still actively going on, and we're still sending people through the courts, though COVID-19 have slowed that process down, but we're also still continuing to identify returning citizens with outstanding fines and fees and helping them pay that off through the fund. The other good news is that we know that a lawsuit was filed last summer against this legislation, and it was led by the ACLU and other organizations. And I'm happy to announce that this past week, the case has concluded, and all indications point to the judge actually ruling favorably in favor of the plaintiff, which means that those individuals in the state of Florida who are legitimately unable to pay off their fines and fees will have some type of relief to be able to register to vote. And so we're very excited about the future. We're going to continue to keep our head down and do God's work. And in the meantime, if you want to continue supporting us, we'll be more than happy to engage with you in any way possible to continue our efforts to make sure that as many of the 1.4 million Floridians who want to participate in elections have that opportunity to do so. Thank you all once again for your support and continued support. And please stay safe out there during COVID-19. Protect you and your family. Look forward to fellowshipping with you all in the very near future. Have a great day.
So there are so many stories that we could tell tonight. Those are just a few from our partners who have been working tirelessly with UUs to UU the vote and to vote love and defeat hate in 2020. While we're taking collective action, we feel powerful. We love showing up for our communities and showing up for justice. But we also know that in this time that we might need time to rest, we have to take care of our communities and build up the spiritual resilience that we need to get through this moment. So I am really excited to introduce you all to Reverend Ashley Horan, the Director of Organizing Strategy, who will be speaking to you about spiritual resilience and COVID-19. Reverend Ashley.
Good evening, everybody. Nicole, just want to uplift your leadership in making this event happen tonight, and the whole team that has gathered here and shared these words with everybody. And tonight, my job is to talk a little bit about what gets us through in these moments when so many of us are hurting. As we've already heard tonight, and as many of us already know, this a global pandemic like this, of course, affects all of us, but it affects us so differently, right? I mean, there are those among us who are personally already impacted. We've lost family or loved ones to COVID. We are tending for loved ones who are sick. We're figuring out how to navigate family situations with elders who are in facilities, or children who are out of school and trying to learn from home. And I know personally, we talked about the fact that my 5-year-old hasn't hugged another child in 8 weeks. And breaks our hearts, right? All of these things. And then of course, there are the systemic inequalities that are impacting us all differently, right? The fact that our Black communities, our Native communities are disproportionately impacted by the virus because of white supremacy, right? Pre-existing conditions that have made, set up this moment for so many among us to be on the front lines for harm. And when we consider the enormity of the problem, right? This is a global pandemic, and not a single human being on the planet is going to escape this untouched. So the question for us as spiritual people, as religious people, as people who are deeply invested in one another and in the building of beloved community as the thing that we do together, this is a moment where our faith is tried, where we try to figure out where we find that hope to keep going, knowing that we do in fact need one another. And for me, I ground in our two, bookend Unitarian Universalist principles of understanding the inherent worth and dignity of all people, the fact that it's incredibly important for all of us to value the life of every single human being who is in this moment facing these crises, right? Every life is valuable. That is our stance, is that every single life is worthwhile and worthy of saving. And so it means that we are deeply caring about all of the people in our communities, while at the same time understanding the deep interconnection, right? This is not just about me and mine and my home. It's not just about my block, my community. This is about the entirety of our human family and the planet. So what does that mean, practically speaking, right? How do we push through? And I've heard these conversations from a lot of folks around, what if my congregation doesn't survive? I've lost my job. I don't know if I have any more to give. I am caring for children, and how am I going to get my work done? Or I'm caring for elder people, and I don't have enough left to give to justice work right now. I don't have enough left to volunteer, to be in community with folks who are trying to move anything beyond immediate survival forward. And first, I want to say, if that is you right now, we're with you, and it's okay, right? That our bodies and our spirits and our hearts are smart, and they will tell us when we need to rest, when we need to take a minute to reset our nervous systems, to just push through so that the people that we love are surviving. And it's bigger than just that, right? If we had, the 7 billion people on the planet all dealing with that on the micro level in their own little homes, we'd be in trouble. But the truth is, because we are radically interconnected, this is a moment in which we really need to take shifts for the revolution. They say that all ministers only have one sermon that they preach, and that is mine, is that we need to take shifts for the revolution. As Paige was so powerfully invoking earlier, asking us to envision what that future would be if we were just so close we could taste it. We know that in order to get there, we are going to need to cycle in and out, right? This is a long haul thing. And I remember at the beginning of the COVID-19 crisis, when folks were talking about, well, maybe we'll shut down for a couple of weeks or a month or two. And, now we're talking in scales of months and years about before we're able to regather safely together for worship and for our justice work, right? And so in order to get us through that, we are going to need to figure out how deep our bench is, right? How many people we have lined up ready to step in, So when my family member gets sick, I'm going to need to step out for a few minutes. And then there are 10 other people who've trained up, who have joined together in solidarity, who have built trust together so that when the moment comes, we can move. Adrienne Marie Brown talks about murmurating and the deep trust that's required to do that, to move in sync with each other, not all doing exactly the same thing at the same time, but sensing one another's movements enough so that one of us can go this way while the other goes this way, and we don't crash, nor do we get so separate that we're not able to be in sync together. So in this time, I want to encourage all of you to be looking both at your own spiritual practices, the things that are giving you life and joy and hope, taking care of your bodies, of your spirits, of your people. And also reaching out beyond your own circle, looking for those examples of hope and of inspiration beyond yourselves, and doing the hard work of building trust and making connection with folks that you are committed to being in it for the long haul with. And so one of the things at UU The Vote that we want to offer in that quest is our spiritual nourishment groups. Those are small groups that meet twice a month. You can go for one session, you can go for every session, but you can find more information about those at our website, uuthevote.org. But it's an opportunity to go a little bit deeper with some folks who you probably don't know yet, to build trust, to build a place for holding of our spirits and our dreams. And it is, in fact, our responsibility to care for our spirits, for our souls, so that we can take our shift when it is our moment, when we have a little bit extra, when we have health and resources and energy. We need to be able to move in to action, to join together with each other, to take our shift for the revolution so that others can rest, with the deep trust that also others are going to be giving us that same opportunity. So with gratitude, I invite you all into that deep work of taking care of souls and spirits, and invite you to join us for our spiritual nourishment groups. Find out more on our website. Thank you.
Whew. Thank you, Reverend Ashley. And thank you to all our speakers tonight. All our communities have power. And tonight we have over 1,000 folks that are here to vote love, defeat hate, and expand democracy in 2020. And while we take local actions and state actions, You the Vote is joining a chorus of other campaigns, other movement leaders that are calling on Congress to act so that no one has to choose between voting and their health. So you've probably received a text message from us in the past minute or so. Right now, we are asking folks to click the link in your text. This is a link to a petition that is calling on Congress to ensure free and fair elections through vote by mail, increased early voting, and safe in-person voting, among other things. We cannot let COVID-19 be an excuse to limit access to the ballot. If you don't receive a text in the next couple of minutes, you can text Vote Safe to 51555. So tonight, as we act together from California to Maine, Washington to Florida, let's protect democracy under COVID-19. We're asking everyone that's watching right now to add your name to this petition and to triple our impact by sending it to 3 other friends. Tonight, we can mobilize over 4,000 voters to protect our democracy. And while you're signing this petition, I want to thank our panelists and every person who's been involved in making this event happen. Please, everyone that is behind the scenes, unmute, show your face, give folks a wave and hello. I am just in awe of folks that have answered the call, who have joined us and You the Vote to make this happen. It takes a huge team to make these webinars and live events happen, and I am just so grateful. Thank you all who are watching. Thank you all who made the virtual choir happen. And thank you all who are in the middle of signing this petition. Tomorrow we'll send out an email and give you the numbers. This petition will stay up, so keep those texts going, keep signing on. We definitely need to get this work done and tell our Congress that we believe in democracy and that we can get through this. My hearts are with you all. Please rest, please take care, and when you are ready, please act. For more information, visit us at uuthevote.org. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.